New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good afternoon. I'm Reverend Barbara Schreiner Trudell, affectionately called Rev B. Welcome to Joy with Rev B. Joy is an acronym for Just One You. I believe the path to joy comes from accepting ourselves as we are, as we were created. So today, as we begin, what I want to do is just share with you my hope for this program, which would be that we would have conversations between myself and many wonderful, creative, beautiful people to discover how we arrive at joy by being authentically how we were created, to honor our emotions, to honor our journey, and to honor all that has brought us to this moment. So I'm super excited. Now, what I believe is that there's only one thing going on, God the good. And so I know that everything comes from that. But I also know that there is in this human journey, grief. There is times when we lose a loved one and the struggle that we go through trying to find our path forward as a result of that journey and the challenges that it brings for us. And we're all pretty familiar with, the ideas of death and also the pathway through grief, which, some of us have heard that it's denial and bargaining and anger, depression, acceptance. Well, today we're going to talk about one more. We're going to talk about regret. And we're talking about that because it doesn't seem to be dealt with in much of the material out there. So I'm really excited to invite a great friend of mine, Reverend Fred Ouimette. We met. Oh, my French, it needs some work. Fred Ouimette, who will be joining me to have this discussion. And so it is with great joy that I introduce my good friend, Fred. Hello.
Good afternoon, Rev B.
Well, I'm so glad.
Excited. Very excited to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. Now, we were chatting, which is how I got you to come onto the show, is we were chatting about the journey of loss because you recently had a significant loss in your life. Can you share about that?
Absolutely. So I recently lost my baby brother. So I affectionately referred to him as my baby brother. We lost our mother when I was 9 and he was only 4 years old. And so I was instrumental in raising him, in helping him grow through his teens and into his young adulthood. And so it was a particularly strong bond that we had and that we shared throughout our life. And so the loss was pretty big. The loss was pretty big.
And what exactly? He's pretty young.
Yeah, so he had been sick for probably 2 or 3 years now. His health had been declining. He had diabetes when he was in his 20s. I mean, I seem to have all those genes that keep me young, and he had all of the ones that sort of aged him rapidly. He had degenerative bone disease. He had cancer, prostate cancer, when he was 33, sorry. So he had a lot of health issues. And over the last 3 years, he had quadruple heart surgery. He was losing weight. So there were so many issues with his health. We did not find out until about 3 days before he passed that he had indeed had pancreatic cancer. And so they told us on the Thursday, and he had passed on the Saturday. So it was very quick, and he got to decide his path. You know, they'd offered him treatment, and he said, "I'm sorry, everyone, but, you know, I'm not going to do this anymore." He was quite ill. Yeah. And so we got to honor that process with him and let him know that, you know, that we would be okay. And we all had our, you know, 1 hour with him, one-on-one, and then together. And he was, you know, cognizant and able to speak. And so we had some amazing conversations during that last day. And then next day he was gone.
It's so challenging. Getting a weird echo. I'm not sure why. Yeah, it's very challenging when someone that we love dearly goes so quickly. But listening to what he'd been going through, that feels a little bit like a blessing that it didn't drag on and on and on once he was diagnosed with the pancreatic cancer.
Yes, that is true. And also, I mean, I have to say that during that time, you know, I was never in denial, I think, that he was experiencing something and that we may part. But there was that part of me that could not accept or see him as gone while he was still here.
Of course.
And
now, as you're journeying along here, I wonder if you can speak to the regrets that you've experienced as a result of this, because that's one of the things we talked about the other day was regret. And I think that's pretty common whenever we lose someone, especially unexpectedly.
Right. So absolutely. That's kind of the big shocker to me. And I don't know why I didn't know it. You know, I did my thesis actually on grief. And so, I mean, I did Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's, plus I've experienced a lot of grief in my life with, you know, family and friends and mother and, you know, grandmother, mother figure and all of this. So I kind of thought, you know, I had the book on it, right? And I remember thinking, well, how come I'm feeling this when I wrote the book? Like, shouldn't I get an exemption or a pass? And I could feel each stage of grief, you know, come up, and I could allow it to come up. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But the one that really took my feet, took the feet from under me was regret. I had a tremendous amount of regret. And what's interesting is that since you and I spoke, Rev B, even since that time, you know, the regret that I feel keeps coming back. And, you know, this week it was, I mean, it showed up in, why didn't I have this discussion and this discussion? And why did I tell him it was okay to sleep when I was with him at that last time? And why didn't I address this and this? And I thought, my gosh, like you spoke to him so many times over the last few years as he was dealing with his health issues. You probably did address it somewhere, but it's just, you know, it's just part of the process. And it's not one of the stages that they talk about in anything that I've written. No. And so I mean, I feel like I could write a whole new chapter in my in the house of grief, and call that room regret. So there's sadness and anger and all the other things that we can identify, denial and all of that. But regret is its own room. And what's interesting is that almost everybody who's lost someone that I've had a conversation with all talk about, I wish I was there, or I wish I would have said something, or I wish I could have said one more time, or I wish, and it's just grief's way of presenting you. I look at it like it's a mirror, right? And grief, ego, all of those things, they want you to be held down a little bit. But it's like the layers of an onion. We talk about that in Science of Mind, right? And it's like layers of an onion. It just keeps peeling. And regret is no less of a layer than any other layer.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if we can just honor our process, whatever that looks like, like on the day when we're feeling that, to sit with it and to maybe have a conversation with your brother, because he hasn't ceased to exist. He's just not here. I had a powerful experience with a brother of mine who died a number of years ago, stepbrother actually, and he had committed suicide. And 3 days after his death, he came to me and we had this, I can't really call it a conversation, but it was a communication. And the communication was so profound and beautiful. Like he was truly, truly joyous. He was just a love bubble. And he said to me, or communicated to me, it's hard to talk about, he communicated to me that he was okay, that really all was well. And his request was that I do his eulogy. And that was like, I was a bit shocked because I had not really had any experience with someone on the other side. And this felt very real, very strong, very powerful, but also beautiful. Like he was so okay. That surprised me.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I know my brother said when he had the meeting with the family and the doctors, and there were 4 doctors there, and then there was the family, and my brother said, I know that I'm going to be at peace, and I know that my pain is going to transfer to all of you, and I'm really sorry for that.
That's kind of what happens, isn't it?
Yeah,
like they move on, and then we're left to come to terms.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I thought at that time when he said it, I thought, well, we're going to be relieved too, because you're not going to be in pain. And so I was on still that side of he's alive and he's suffering, right? And so I think, and it's interesting because my father, since last August, has been saying, I've got my suit ready because I don't know how much more time your brother has. And we went on a big family trip that was supposed to happen in 1973. We rented an RV and went out to the East Coast. My brother, my sister, my father, and I. No kids, no grandkids, nothing. And we did an East Coast trip together. And my brother was quite ill then too. But my father was kind of trying to prepare me. But I kept thinking, you can't prepare me for this because I can't go to this place that he's not here while he's here. And so that was my way of processing. When we talk about regret, one of the things, and it's not black and white regret, it's transient, right? Because just like all the stages of grief and love and all of those things, it's all transient. It's happening at the same time and at different times, and you can compartmentalize sometimes, and sometimes you have no control. And you just have to go with what is and drop to your knees and be in the moment and allow that process. But what was interesting is this week, the thing that kept coming up to me, and I've had a really difficult week. My brother passed away on January 29th, and I've had the stages of grief and really sat in it to be authentically expressed. Mm-hmm. And what I found most incredible was this week. What kept coming up for me was I lied to my brother. And I thought, and I kept thinking, because I told him that I would be okay, and I'm not okay.
Not okay.
And I kept saying to myself, it's okay not to be okay, but I wish I could have told him that I'm not going to be okay with you being gone. You see how the mind does that? It's like the seed gets planted that I'm not okay. Oh my gosh, I told my brother that I'd be okay. Oh my gosh, I lied to him. Oh, maybe I didn't tell him how much I would miss him and how much I loved him, right? And yet every time we spoke, we ended with "I love you," always, our entire life, right?
Yeah.
So, and when we did the trip out east, we'd had conversation around life as well. So we had conversation around, you see the light, you go, and everything is going to be okay, and mom's going to be there to greet you, and we'd had all of these conversations. But for some reason, in that moment, when your mind gets that seed planted that you missed something, and you need to get that pressure off of you, the grief pressure.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested in talking about how I can let the grief be fully expressed. I'd be interested in telling you how that process takes place as well, because I think.
Oh, I think you froze.
Okay.
That would be a really important part of the conversation, is processing that. Because one of the things that I've been hoping to illustrate to people through this program is that living authentically is truly the way that we fulfill our life. It's the way that we experience real joy. Because it really does require that we show up. And when we're dealing with grief, it's a little bit harder in the sense that we are struggling with our own pain, our fear, our regret, the anger, all of the different things that are going on as a result of losing someone we love. And yet death is as natural to life as birth. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you have to say about the process of, moving through that grief and creating the healing.
Well, thank you for that intro. That's exactly what it is it's a process, and it is as equal to birth as it is the opposite. I have a very interesting story, because when Mom died, we were living in a time when children were seen and not heard, and so don't bring up their mother because it upsets them, and there were all boys don't cry, Freddie, all around this time I was like, no, I am going to allow myself to express this fully. The one tool that I had in my toolbox that everyone who understands science of mind or follows science of mind, and even people who don't on some subconscious level understand, and this is the key, this is the learning right here. Grief is love. And it's really that simple. To the degree that you love is to the degree that you will grieve. Absolutely. And so when you love so deeply, you grieve deeply. Now, so if you can, in the middle of your stage, whatever it is that you're at, whatever's making you cry, and the drop to your knees cry, or the anger that is like this rage that sometimes comes out, when you're dealing with that, the reason that I could really allow myself to be steeped in that grief is because I kept reminding myself, this is just love. This is just love. And so all the rooms of grief are there. The foundation of that house of grief is love. And as long as you can remember that, then you can really allow yourself to go to that place. You know, grief is ugly and messy and dirty and not easy. And it is, you know, it is painful, and you want to leave the pain. We're taught that, you know, as you think you create. So therefore, why would you allow yourself even 2 minutes in being upset? But it's because it's the truth. There is no spiritual bypass. There is no bypass from this. And here's what happens if you don't deal with it from an authentic, truthful, loving, self-loving. Trust me, self-loving is required. If you do not allow yourself to get there, then you are not allowing yourself to truly express the love that you really feel. The only way to heal is to really look at all of it and say, you know, this is freaking horrible, right? I don't want this, but yet I know I'm in it, and I know that I'm experiencing it. So you can either fight it and resist it, and there's that urge and temptation to do that, or it's like, no, Fred, you can sit in it. You can take the hour you need to sit here and, you know, cry your eyes out because you just saw something that reminded you of your brother, and now you're going to go there, right? And then you think, and then you have these moments where you're thinking, you know, oh my gosh, like I am almost over this. Like I can breathe again. I can feel. I'm looking at nature. I'm looking at spring come up. I'm like, I feel really good. And then you'll see, you know, I'll see a motorcycle go by, and I'll go, oh my God, Francis, love motorcycles. And then I'm down on my knees, right? And in it again. And you know, it's hard to, and here's the other thing. I found, you know, some of my closest friends I didn't go to release, because I'm like, no, I'll need them in the long run, right? But I found a few key people who showed up in my world that I could fully express my anger, my joy, all of it.
Yeah.
And that was such a gift, because just knowing that I could call someone and go, I am so angry about this. And I will tell you another thing, when it comes to anger and regret, sometimes you think it's about the person. But it's like suddenly you're angry because you're dealing with a customer service rep who's kept you on hold for 3 minutes. And you're thinking, you're going to rage, and I'm like, wait, this isn't me. I don't, this is, what is this? Who is this person? This calm, loving, kind person that I identify with, and all of a sudden I'm feeling this rage. And I'm going, oh, hold on a second here. Here it comes. You're still in this. You're still on this wave. Just let the wave go. Let it expand. Sit in the room for a while. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, this place, right? And isn't that the same?
Yeah, that's the thing with this journey that we do, right? There's that when we have a deep hurt, oftentimes we will act out in a way that is highly inappropriate to what's going on in that moment, but it's coming from a deeper pain. It's coming from somewhere else. And you're absolutely right. If we can sit in it, when the pain comes up, it always reminds me a little bit of the ocean. You know, you're walking along the shore, and, you know, you're not even getting your toes wet. So you venture out a little further, and then it's, you know, lapping at your toes a little bit. And, you know, you're feeling kind of good. And then all of a sudden a huge wave comes in and smacks you to the ground. And it's like, where did that come from? And that to me is grief. I remember when my dad died, which was when I left CSL Toronto. My dad died, and it was a really difficult time for me. And, you know, I thought I got over it all. And last year, I mean, it's been 10 years. And last year I was talking to somebody, and all of a sudden the wave hit me, and I had not experienced it in probably a couple of years at least. And all of a sudden there it was. But the most important thing is just to be with it. Like everything in life, if we can be with what is in each moment, we actually create for ourselves the opportunity to heal and to change what's going on so that we can return to joy.
Absolutely. And here's the thing too, and you said it as well. I love that. That if we can allow it and understand that, because I can walk in love and pain at the same time. We often think of them as two opposites, and yet they're equal. Joy can, I think, living authentically, I mean, because people have this image that you're living authentically, so, Pollyanna, and, you're living, you're ignoring what's going on, and that is just so not true. And if we are not willing to allow and to sit and to watch and to witness and to do that with love of ourselves, then yeah, that's when we start to turn to things like maybe alcohol, maybe substances, maybe, we start to unconsciously start to act out, as you say, in some other ways, right? That are non-healthy ways, right? And so I think that's what I love about this philosophy is it's not, we're not giving it to a higher power to take care of it for us, and we just get to sit back and listen. If that's what you need to do, there's nothing wrong with that either. But what I love about science of the mind is that we actually get to take responsibility for our part of the journey, and as such, that's where the growth comes from. That's where, moving into the next wave, as you call it, comes, right? Now I know I'm going to roll around in that wave occasionally. My mother's has passed away 49 years on April 30th, right? Mm-hmm. If I can stand at her grave, now I visit her grave a lot, it's up north. We have a big family event at her grave every year where she meets her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and we all come together as a family on her death anniversary, and we have dinner and we celebrate her, and we go to the grave and we light candles and we do all of that. We've been doing that for about 11 years now. And this year we're going to be burying my little brother with my mother. So it's going to be kind of a bigger journey. But if I can stand there after 49 years and cry and experience something as though it just happened yesterday, then grief never goes away. And you touched on that when you talked about your dad. There are moments when I miss my mom, right? I had a friend who lost a 17-year-old daughter 15 years ago. The anniversary was April 14th. And she posted how this year was particularly difficult because it happened on Easter weekend, and this year was Easter weekend, so it was the exact day. So, and I posted to her, as a good friend, I said, grief will never end because grief is love, and love never ends. And she just said, oh my God, that brings me joy to know that I will love my daughter as deeply as I always have.
Yeah, that's when we see the depth of our love, number one, as a positive, and the level of our grief as reasonable, because it really does reflect the level of love that we felt for each other prior to the transition time. And so when we lose somebody, there's just something in there that, of course, it's going to take time. It must. That's the only reasonable conclusion we can come to. I mean, we all know that birth and death are exactly what it is that we do. And yet, for some reason, there is a hesitancy on our part to acknowledge death, to talk about death, to be in conversation about what it is, what it means, how it feels, and to be honest about it. And I think being honest about the dying process and how everything works for us is so essential, so essential. We're going to go to a quick little break here. We have been talking about grieving and regrets with my dear, dear guest and wonderful friend, Fred Ouimette. I know I said that wrong. And we'll be back in just a moment. You're watching Just One You, Joy with Rev B. Well, today we're talking about grief, and we're talking about the process of grieving and what it brings up and how it feels and how to deal with it. And my wonderful guest, Reverend Fred, is sharing with us his personal experience of grief and grieving. And Fred, we were talking about the how it seems to come in waves, and how although it sometimes sort of slips away, but then it tends to come back when we least expect it. What can you say about that, or how to maybe go through it easier? Is there anything that you can offer there?
Well, I would say I think we touched on it a little bit, how we really need to be present as we're going through it, and to really sit in it. It's like a wave. When a wave comes in, sometimes it catches you off guard. This happened while I was in Mexico in February, by the way. We were playing in the waves and, jumping into them as they were coming, and they were like, fairly decent. And then one wave came that was so unexpected and so big that we tumbled. And I was thinking, I thought I lost my bathing suit. It was that. Look out, beachgoers. But it was like one of those things where I was like, caught me unexpected, and one of my friends went down and scraped his forearm. It was just that strong. And but when that wave might come again, it's how do I go into it, right? So that you're not caught where you're like I said to you, fall to your knees, right? But ride the wave. So I learned very quickly that if it's a big wave and you see it, you go, oh, here it is. And what you need to do is to jump as high as you can and then ride the wave in. Allow the wave to take you in, right? So grief is kind of like that. It's like, I don't know how long this is going to last, where I am completely feeling blindsided, or here it is again, but I can see it coming now because I can feel it. It's like, when you learn to live your life in peace and joy and harmony and balance, right? And then all of a sudden you can feel, you go, okay, something's stirring. It's a train of thought. Right? It's a motorcycle going by in my case, or seeing a picture or having a thought of something about my brother. And then I go, whoa. And you feel that sinking, just like you do when you see the wave coming and you're going, here it is. And it's like, okay, jump into this, allow this, and allow yourself to ride this through. Don't resist, don't fight. Don't let it throw you off so much that you're scraped and can't catch your breath and don't know where you are. Right? Just know that experience taught me that I've been to this place. I have been to this broken down place, right? I have been to this angry place, this sad place, this regretful place, and how do I just let myself ride with that feeling, right? I came back in February. I came back and I had a healing shawl, this little healing shawl that my brother had, and that his stepdaughter had made for him. And it was in my car. I didn't realize it was in my car. I went to get my luggage out of the car, and I thought, oh, I'm handling everything really great. Like I literally landed, the airplane, and I thought, this is so amazing. I'm doing really well. Like I think I've now turned that big corner. And then I opened my trunk to get my suitcase out, and there was this healing blanket. And in my garage in freezing cold February, I went, oh, here it is. And I couldn't even close the trunk. When I say drop to my knees, I dropped to my knees in the garage and sat with my head on my bumper and wept, like as though the world had shut down. And I kept saying, I hate this part. I hate this part. And then I'm going, but it's love. And I've got all these things, right? I've got all the tools, and I'm going, it's like going to your toolkit and going, everything is disorganized. I can't find it right here, right now, right? And then I come back from Mexico with this wave experience, and I literally went, this is a wave.
This is
And
a
whether you
wave.
stay here for 10, 15, 20 minutes, it's irrelevant. Just stay here. Stay in this. Stay in this.
You know, it passes like the wave. It comes in and it goes out if we don't resist it. When we resist, then it hunkers down, and then all of a sudden we are having something that will last long term.
That's right.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
everything
is everything what?
changes.
Yeah, it's alive, right? We're alive. I mean, that was the other thing that I wanted to touch on. Thank you for saying that, Rev B. This is part of life.
Yeah.
Right? Feelings, however they show up, the good, the bad, the ugly, however we define it.
Yeah.
It's part of aliveness, you know? You think of life force, like when I think of life force, when I think of my God self or my good self or my whatever name you give it, right? When I think of that I am made of the same substance as trees, as who release their leaves every year, right? They don't go, oh my God, my leaves are gone. I'm dead. No, they go, I'm going to sleep for a while. And I'm going to wake up fresh and have a whole new batch of life, right?
Yes.
So when I think of my God self, my good self, my spiritual self, I know that my degree of aliveness is there, right? It expresses itself not only in the joys that life brings, it expresses itself in the pain as well, right? It expresses. I will never get over my brother being gone.
No, of course not. Of course not. And the
And
thing is
there's
that this journey that we're on, if we didn't have ups and downs, how would we ever know what joy is or what love is or you know what what life really could be? If we want to avoid certain things, we're not truly alive. It's so important that we just have it all. My attitude is I'm here for however long I'm here. And when I leave, I want to leave like an empty shell, like I spent everything, every dime, everything that I had, I gave it into life. That's where I want to be at the end.
absolutely. And spending everything doesn't mean I have to do everything and everything and everything and everything and everything. For me, it used to mean that to me at one point in my life, right? I've got to experience everything. I got to do this. I had a bucket list. I don't even know where it came from. I needed to go to Graceland. I decided that in November. I took it, and I did. Last week I was in Graceland and experienced that. And you know what? And here's the interesting thing about that is we talk about sliding into home plate and, I want to leave it all behind. But you know what? You are absolutely correct, because I just had this conversation this morning with a very dear friend who is experiencing some health issues right now. And I had that conversation about really expressing and really that we wouldn't know good health if we didn't experience the opposite of good health. And I talked about grief, and I said, when you think about it, how much appreciation would we have if we lived forever for what's happening right now? We talk about getting older, and everybody's like, oh, I don't want to get older. And I'm like, well, the alternative just doesn't. I know I'm going to get to the alternative at some point. We all are going to transition. I don't want to get there too soon because I feel like there's more to do. But if there isn't, then I have spent everything in my tank. And spending everything in my tank sometimes means sitting quietly, reading a book, being contemplative, taking a week off to rest, saying yes to me and sometimes no to something else, which to someone else may feel like I'm letting them down, but allowing myself to be authentically where I am, sticking to my commitments, absolutely. But sometimes you have to say no to that and yes to this. And we wouldn't know that if we hadn't experienced.
Well,
That's
the thing. I think the big importance for us is to ensure that we are always in the now moment. Like, this now moment is the only point of power. If I'm living in the past, I'm powerless, which is why it causes us such pain when we're living in guilt or shame or regret or whatever. It's all coming from our history, and there's nothing we can do about it because it is what it is. And when we project too far into the future, we're in the same place. We can't really be powerful there because the future doesn't exist yet. So in this now moment, I have the ability to simply be. And if I can allow my authentic feelings, attitudes, my authentic wishes and desires be revealed, then there's an opportunity for me to have a fulfilled and satisfied life. But if I'm hiding or pretending, there's no chance for it.
Yeah, and sometimes we think that we're hiding it, right? Sometimes, we're in the world and we're putting on that proverbial happy face.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, people know, right? Because we're energy. And when our energy is not that sort of that authentic self, truth, light, even in the, I've always said this, you know what? I can deal with crazy if it's authentic crazy. And I don't mean to be derogatory, I don't mean but I can deal with eccentricities. I can deal with people's, quirks because I've got them, we've all got them. If it's authentic, I can feel it. If it's not, you can also feel that. And I once said to someone, I said, first of all, I always feel loved by people in my life. I feel very blessed for that, really, really do. But I said to somebody one time, I just find that there's some relationships that I'm not able to cultivate. And someone reminded me, they said, Fred, that's because some people are living on that surface level. And you live in this deep-seated truth about your life. And it's okay to still love everyone, even if they're living on that superficial level. But you may not find that there are synchronicities enough in your life to be able to travel with them at this time as like close friendships, because maybe they're just in a different place. And I went, whoa.
Yeah, that's
powerful. Love that.
Yeah. When you honor where another person is, you actually are honoring where you are as well. And we're not necessarily meant to like every person. That would be difficult. But love is a different thing. Love is that I am one with you. When we recognize, because we teach that we're one with God, we're one with all that is. There's only one thing going on, and we live, move, and have our being in it. And so knowing that allows us to make decisions and choices, knowing that life is always in motion. There will constantly be motion. Things come and go. And that's the constant. Change is the constant. And the things that don't change, well, the divine, of course, does not change. That energy, which sometimes I call Fred. It's funny because some people have trouble with the word God. And so we talk and I'll go, well, it's first cause, it's universe, it's creator. And, call it Fred if you want, but it's kind of my go-to. So, but, it's helping people to understand that the spiritual path, although it's not always coming across as easy, it is very satisfying and fulfilling because we're dealing with life as it comes, and it will come. We just came through 2 years of lockdown and, having to all of a sudden start wearing masks and sanitizing our hands and doing all kinds of things we're not accustomed to, not to mention not being able to buy the things that we want to buy when we want to buy them, like, soap. There's certain brands you can get, but the one you want might not be there. And it's like just coming to terms with life is an evolving story. And part of that story is birth and death. And when we can just acknowledge that this is what's happening. When my dad died and I did his funeral, there was moments of tears, but there was moments of laughter as well, because he was a funny guy. And so I told a joke that was, okay to tell in mixed company. The type of jokes he told, you couldn't tell publicly because they were questionable at many levels. But there was something about that to, go through this process of letting go, but doing it in a way that really honors the individual by laughing and crying, by sharing the stories that warm our hearts, but also, again, deepen maybe what we're feeling in the sense of grief and loss. But it's a journey.
It is a journey. And you bring up another interesting point about grief. And I think if there's a takeaway, this would be probably one of the biggest takeaways, other than love, grief is love, and love never disappears.
I love that.
Is that in that, yeah, and you know what? In that house of grief, it doesn't have to be a bungalow. So love is the foundation. The main floor of grief is like, sadness, darkness and regret and anger and all of those. But there's a second level. It's not a bungalow. There's a second level. And even when you're in the throes of grief on the main floor, the second floor has things like laughter and good memories and life and all of those other things, And so it's important to know that sometimes you have to go to the basement and sit in the love, surrounded by the foundation of love. And sometimes it's okay. And when you do that, you understand that you can go into the rooms of fear and pain and all of those things. But you can also venture upstairs too, right? Yes. You can climb those difficult stairs. And then when you get there, you get to remember the laughter. My brother, the morning that they called us at 4:00 in the morning and said, "This is it, you need to get here." And we got to the room and he opened his eyes and looked around. And, he pointed at me and went, "It's your fault." And that was our thing, right? We would say, "It's your fault." "No, it's your fault. It's your fault," right? And so he went, "It's your fault." And his niece, his granddaughter, who's 15, said, "Oh my God, Papa, you've made a joke." And he said, and he goes, "Yeah, jokes. So she read him 3 jokes and he laughed with her, right? They were the corniest jokes. But my brother had a sense of humor. And can I share this? This is because, so my brother, so I have my hour with him. Yeah. And he's cognizant and aware and holding my hand, and he's leaned over to the side of the bed. And, we're talking about different things. We're doing brotherly talk. We're talking about memories that we had when we were kids. And, we're going through this whole thing. And he goes, "Fred, I'm always going to be with you, right?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And he goes, "Yeah, when you feel the smack up in the back of your neck for doing something wrong, that's me." And I started chuckling. And then I thought afterwards, most people get like when you see a butterfly or a hummingbird or and my brother said, when you feel the smack up the back of your head. But that was him, you see? And that kind of lets me know that he was still who he was, and we still had that relationship, even as he was about to transition, and knowing we both knew that he was transitioning. So I get to visit that room. I get to visit the room of laughter. Yeah. My sister and I, she's a couple of years older than me, and for us to be able to sit and talk about him and bring him with us, bring him, our baby brother's journey, right? And talk about when he came home from the hospital and how I held him and how, right? And how, my mother said to me, "That's your baby brother." And I went, "No, he's not. He's my baby." Because my sister got dolls. I got a baby, right? So there was this whole, right? So this whole life that we've had with him, and we laughed about, when we taught him to ride his bike, and how silly were we? We put him on a bike and pushed him down a hill on a dirt road on a 2-wheel bike and said, "Learn," right? So he had a little scar on his forehead, And it was from, right? But like, I was thinking, that was like so cruel, but we're like, he did learn how to ride a bike. So we still have access to all of that too. And so when we speak of grief, whatever grief it is, we also, from this point, which is only ever now, because I can't go back and be there the day he passed. I can feel it, but I'm feeling it from now, right? The healing can only take place now, and like layers of an onion in layers. And so if all I've got is right now, I get to look at and walk into any of those rooms in that house called Texas, right? I get to walk in any room at any time and decide on laughter, on love, and then it may be followed by a tear, right? Or, it may be tired, filled with regret for things not done or things I wish I could have done. There could be all of those things, right?
Yeah.
The idea is I love your program because it's joy, right? It's joy.
And we get to that joy as we allow ourselves to live in our current reality, to honestly be where we are and not to avoid it, resist it, call it bad, but really to just be in the experience going, it is what it is. And I can't change that. And I can be with it. My ex-husband died, it'll be coming up to 3 years, and he was the father of my sons. And as he was going through the dying process, which it was really a shock because he was perfectly healthy. And all of a sudden, just out of the blue, we get a phone call that he is in hospital as a quadriplegic. And it was an abnormal group of cells at the base of the skull here that ruptured or whatever, and as a result, severed the spinal column, like caused it so the spinal column couldn't connect with the brain. So he was paralyzed from the neck down. And it happened really quickly. He woke up with a headache. He was supposed to go golfing with our son, and he woke up with a headache and ended up calling EMS because it was so severe and took him to the hospital. The next day, the doctor goes, well, I don't really see anything wrong. They'd done a CAT scan, so we can send you home. And he says, I don't think I can go home. And he went to stand up and he collapsed. He was already paralyzed up to the waist at that point. And by the end of the day, he was a quadriplegic. And by the Sunday, that was a Thursday, and by Sunday, he could no longer breathe on his own. So for the next couple of weeks, they did a surgery. They couldn't correct it. They couldn't change it. And after, I think about 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, he decided, I'm done. I'm not going to live like this. He had a tracheotomy, and so he couldn't talk to us. But what was really funny, I did his funeral for him. I saw him the day that he died. I went and saw him in the morning. I arrived in Calgary the night before so I could spend some time with him. And he asked if I would do his funeral. I said, absolutely. And he said, you'll make it short, right? I said, for sure. No more than, maybe 3, 4, 5 hours tops. He rolls his eyes. Gives me a look like, oh, yeah. Not. But it was a fun exchange. And the very last thing he said to me was, kiss me. And so I tried to jump up on the bed as best I could, gave him a kiss, and then left him with his 2 sons who were in town, and then his parents and siblings. And they were with him as he walked through those last few hours. But they removed life support at 10 in the morning. He passed at 5 in the afternoon, and they kept him comfortable. He was perfectly fine. And, I just want to thank you for this conversation because it's such an important conversation. So Fred, I hope you have a most wonderful weekend. I am truly grateful we had this time together. It feels like it was way too short, so we might have to do a follow-up show down the road. But I thank you and I bless you. And I know that you're going to go do remarkable things and your healing will continue. And the book you write about grief and regret is going to be a very valuable resource for a lot of people. So thank you for being here. And as we close the show today, I just want to remind everybody that I will be here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern to share stories of people's lives and how they live them authentically and honestly, and how that creates such a rich environment for everyone who knows them, but also for their own journey. And, if you're interested, every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, my center, the Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, is online with a live production of Science Mind principles, music, and conversation. It really is a beautiful time to be together. I know that this teaching changes lives, transforms everything about us, and creates an opportunity for us to live to our highest potential. So I invite you to check it out. If you don't know of the Science of Mind, check it out. You will be glad you did. It healed my life. It's a healing journey, really. And it's powerful. We believe that there's one thing going on in the universe, that it's present everywhere equally, and that each and every one of us is created in that image and likeness. So we move forward knowing that our thoughts become things, that what we think about, we bring about. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, got something powerful, positive, or productive out of it. And I look forward to being with you again next week. Have a most fabulous weekend. This is Rev B with The Joy Show. Just one you. Namaste.